Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers. With me today is one of my dear friends and sisters. Her name is Venus. Venus is a divine feminine embodiment coach, a Reiki master specializing in womb Reiki, and a spirit shaman. It's such an honor to have you on today. Welcome, Venus.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that we made it.
Yeah, we've
I'm so
tried.
happy that we're here.
We've tried to record this. This is our third go. Uh,
There you go.
there was all kinds of internet issues and all kinds of things that didn't upload
Yeah.
on time. So here we are with the final version for this one, and I'm sure there'll be
Yes.
more. But yeah, I mean, today we're gonna try. Let's see where spirit takes us. But we're gonna start by sharing about Venus's awakening journey. We'll talk about light language. We'll talk about channeling. We'll talk about potentially all these things are potential, right? We're gonna try to get to them, but we'll see where
Gonna
spirit
stay
guides
on
us.
course.
Right, right. And we'll talk about negative energy removal and attachments and extraterrestrials, of course. So, Venus, I would love to hear about your awakening journey.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you to all my ancestors and Mother, Father, God, and all the angels and spirit guides that have gotten me here today for this amazing experience and to share wisdom. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to you, Peter. I feel really honored to be here and just your friendship. So thank you for just being your amazing, authentic self and always creating such a safe space. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying all those things, and it's
Yeah,
mirrored right back at you. And
thank you.
it's I'm really excited to dive into this because the last couple have been really awesome, but this is gonna be the juiciest parts of those conversations.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
one that takes off, you
right.
know. And I feel right before I get in, we've always met either on like a full moon or a new moon or like a portal day. Like yesterday was a portal day, so
Hmm.
we're still like in that really expansive energy. So
Hmm.
for me, my journey um, with becoming awakened in this world, I really have to go back to my childhood. And when my brother wasn't even born yet. So I was little, like 5, 6, that I remember. And I dreaded going to sleep. I really didn't like the dark. Um, because at nighttime I would have more interactions with spirits, with different beings of all different dimensions, alien beings coming to visit me at night and feeling them like touch me in the bed or just laying next to me or talking to me. It was very disturbing. I'm just like, what do I do with this information? This is wild. I remember, my third eye being so open and activated that I would like go into different portals. Like I even still see it now. Like the corner of my room would like become something else. And it terrified me. I was, um, we'll get into it more, but the spirits that were more so like serving darkness it was easy to be afraid. It was easy to be fearful. So at that point I really like shut down everything. I was so scared I couldn't even go to the bathroom alone like during the daytime as a little girl, and my parents they didn't really know what to do. So fast forward, um my older brother passes away from a motorcycle accident when I'm 20. And for that moment of like realizing how precious death is and life is, and like it's a transitional opportunity, um, that really started opening up my mind and my heart again to the spirit world. Because I was like, well, I'm so close to my brother. I want to stay connected. Like, it can't just be it. Like, there's
Right.
got to be more.
Of course.
Um, and feeling his connection and like having very visible experiences with him, like I did when I was younger, I was like, oh, wait, this is actually not that scary. Um, so for me, it was like the death has really been like a transition um, into really owning my power and owning my power in a way where I know that if a spirit comes into my room at night, I just need to give it love.
Hmm.
Um, Ask if it wants to go to the light. And if it doesn't, then it goes away.
Right.
Um, and just having like a really simple interaction, but knowing like the power of my heart chakra, the power of love really is so powerful. Um, so that's been like an amazing journey just to experience that, to be on so many different ends of the spectrum. Like I always talk about the pendulum swinging. Like when people first meet me, they're usually like, "Wow, you have it all together." Like you probably like came out of the womb like this, and I'm like, "No, definitely didn't." Like I had a rebellious streak, like I had so many different things. Like I was talking to a friend on the phone last night. Like I also, did drugs and alcohol because I thought that's like what you do. I thought that's like how you connect deeper to someone in a relationship. And I
Right.
had to go through these like off track experiences so I could become a master of the lessons that I've learned and become a better teacher,
Right.
you know?
Hmm.
Um, and I'm grateful for like all of the, I guess, misalignments, if people want to call it that. But it's like that's how I'm so wise and how I've mastered certain elements within myself and discernment, intention, integrity, honor, like these qualities within our beings that nowadays a society is like wanting to steer us away from because it's so like instant gratification.
For
Um,
sure. For sure.
Relationships, food, anything you can just get in a second and replace it with whatever wasn't working.
Right.
Um,
Right. You can just
so
swipe
yeah,
right.
my yeah,
Yeah.
swipe right,
Yeah.
next produce, like it doesn't. It's just so it's just different, you
Hmm.
know. So that's my journey to just keep it super short and I could go into it for like hours, but the big parts were my brother, the relationship with my mother. Ooh, that was a big one because it's like I'm sure y'all can relate. It's like we grow up and we have these experiences, some of us with our parents, and we're like, man, this is not what I thought like my mom was gonna be like. I thought she could be like this, but she's showing up like this, and I don't like it.
Hmm.
So we have that like expectation, that judgment of a person who actually signed up to do the thing that we wanted. Like
Right. Like
I
our
chose
soul
my
wanted.
mother.
Our soul
Totally,
wanted. Yeah.
totally. Like I chose my mother to show up the way she did so that I could be super discerning in my relationships, so I could empower myself when someone was trying to shut my voice down or like my own decision making or my own intuition. And I
Hmm.
and I know how to like empower myself in those ways. So she taught me some huge life lessons that I couldn't have learned if she was like the mom I always wanted. you
Yeah,
know?
the TV mom, right? The one we see
Totally.
on all the comedy shows and all that, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were like really big moments in my life because I had a really hard time accepting, and now I've accepted it and I've made peace with it. And I love my mom for, how she's showing up, but I'm not holding her against this like illusionary vision of her that I wanted her to be this person. Now, therefore, she's bad or whatever. It's like, no, she's perfect. Actually, she's doing everything she needs to, so I can become the person that I wanted to be within this family dynamic. So, um, and
And
I'm sure a lot of
also,
women can relate to that story of like the mother daughter story. It's a big one. And then the third pillar that really helped like push my trajectory and re-examine my relationship with money, with wealth, abundance, true abundance, with it, which is inside my relationship and like reconnection to Mother, Father, God
mhm,
was the death of my father, and he passed in 2020, and that was like another big experience for me to go through and like an initiation because I needed to face all of those things and become even more fortified inside. So,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, your story is so powerful, and I think that a lot of people try to avoid facing these things. They try to numb it out in today's society, right? Like they try to do everything they can to not feel, to not go into that uncomfortable uh those uncomfortable body sensations, right?
uh,
We're taught that like tears aren't, especially for men, it's like don't cry. You're a man, don't cry, suck it up, push it down. And
mhm,
those experiences are there are to be fully felt. And it's not going to go anywhere when you push it down. It's just going to eventually come up as anger or frustration or
mhm.
in these ways that are really unhealthy. So, for all the listeners, I really encourage to look at that, because what eventually happens if you don't look at those traumatic, more difficult parts of life is that it manifests as disease, right? And it can
Yeah.
look so different for different people. And uh, I was talking to somebody yesterday at one of my jobs, and they were saying how their daughter took the COVID booster shot, and they got really an autoimmune disease from it. And
Mm,
now they've tried all these holistic herbs, and they're doing all these things, and I was like, okay, how is she like with her emotions? Like, does she communicate them? And they're like, no, she just pushes it all down. She doesn't want to talk about anything. And I was like, okay, so that is a big part of this, It's
yeah.
like that is manifesting itself as the body trying to talk to the person, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
there's so much energy stuck here that it needs to be addressed and felt and moved so
Yeah.
that once that's dislodged and moved from that area, then it can start to manifest into the healing and those kind of things. And every disease, I believe, has emotional components. Like any cancer, any of these things, the body is always trying to tell us what's going on. And sometimes it'll be a little whisper, like a little ache or a pain, right? And then it'll get
Yeah.
louder and louder until, it has to be faced and looked at. So the more we feel, the more we connect and find the tools, right? I know for you and myself, one of my biggest tools in the beginning of my journey was Reiki. When
Mm,
I when
yeah.
I found Reiki, that was so empowering because I was like, I could be going through anxiety anywhere in the world, anywhere in the galaxy, right? Like if we can travel off planet, right? Then
Yeah.
then I can you're telling me I can activate an energy that is always with me that can flow through my hands, through my feet, and back into my body and heal myself from that. That was so empowering for me. I was like, wow, okay, this I don't need anything with me but myself, like and that was one of my first huge initiations. Would you
I can
would
definitely relate. Yeah, I going through my yoga teacher training that opened up a lot of the chakras and like stagnant energy you were talking about, and I was feeling everything that I was shoving down because in my family I didn't show my emotion.
Mhm.
No, no way.
Right,
I cried in
right,
my room by myself. Like,
right.
so I relate to that because I also was introduced into a very masculine society, being a woman. So it being introduced to Reiki after going through like my teacher training as a yoga instructor, I was like, this is amazing. This is awesome. And that is truly when I completely stopped even having a glass of wine or um, having like these little, like, I became very intentional
Hmm.
with my practice. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a Reiki master and I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it how I feel it needs to be done. Like, I'm going to be that pure, clear channel and vessel. So when people come to me, they don't have to go through like, if I had a glass of wine or if I ate like low vibrational foods, like they don't have to feel that. They can just like whoop, get the booster shot of like God,
Right,
which
right,
is Reiki. I'm just making a joke there,
right,
but
right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was so powerful. It Reiki, like, it gave me such a boost of confidence and like really heightened, and that's when my intuition got even more stronger and like came back to what it was when I was little. And that's when I really started to like delegate and navigate and learn about the spirit world and like confront it instead of hide and be frozen in my covers like, oh my god, there's something here. Like,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
mentioned this on one of the other podcasts, but I can totally relate. Like there were moments in my life as a kid where I would be sleeping or trying to fall asleep and there'd be like a knock from the attic, or I'd wake up and I'm getting a little bit of chills right now, but I'd wake up and I'd be dreaming about this. This one dream like stands out big time. I was dreaming I in my house in Michigan where I was growing up, and I had a room on the second floor, and I was in my parents' bedroom downstairs, right below my bedroom upstairs. And in the dream, I heard these footsteps like running through my room, running down the stairs, stopping in front of my parents' room where the door was closed, and and then I opened the door and there's this little girl with blonde hair standing there. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then immediately I wake up and I see in the corner of my room that same spirit. And I'm in that sleep paralysis, you know? And I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. And, later on in my journey, I realized that a lot of times these spirits come to us because they want to go to the light and they feel our energy. They feel that we're able to do that, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and and so eventually, when I moved to San Diego, another big initiation was I helped one of these spirits transfer over into the light,
Mm.
and it was guided. I was on the phone with my dad's Reiki master, and she was a medium, and she guided me on what to do, and basically I opened up a portal for this spirit to leave, and then uh, that was what was happening there was it was uh the knocking knocking on the inside of my closet again, but this time it was
Hmm.
always at like 3 a.m. and uh it was kind of freaky, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna this time I'm gonna figure it out. And so I helped transfer. I called in the ancestors of this spirit, and then they came um, and I was actually like in communication with this spirit through my dad's Reiki master, and she was like, "Okay, he's telling you like he only wants you to do it because he feels like everybody else is just going through the ceremonial steps, and that you're more real, and that you can actually like help in a more authentic way." And I was like, okay. And so I called in, she told me to call in his uh basically his ancestors, his mom and his sister who had already passed over. And he went over to the portal that they held his hand and he went. And then his brother was there and his dog too. So they transferred into that portal and were able to go to the light. So yeah, it was a really beautiful experience and also very empowering where, it was like there's nothing to fear here. These beings are just somehow, for whatever reason, stuck in this dimension and they're trying to get back to the light.
Yeah. And to help the viewers like understand why you were chosen, Peter, is because you have full conviction that you could do it. Like like you had full conviction that you could help send this spirit to the light, and some people, when you don't believe in yourself, when you don't believe you can do it, it's not going to happen.
Hmm.
It's like we are that powerful as humans because of our belief. It's
Right.
like, so just to make that clear, like you are a very powerful being because you believe in yourself, and like you
Hmm.
believe that you're showing up with help, with goodness in your heart, and like to be of service, and like that's really powerful. And um darkness doesn't mess with that. They're like, goodbye.
Right.
Like,
Right.
see you later. I don't want to go to the light yet. Goodbye. Oh, he's gonna send us to the light. Like, let's get out of here. Like, this
Right.
guy knows what's up. you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because it feels as though for many people I've talked to, this is kind of a step in that journey with facing
Mm.
these deeper fears. Even if you look at the story of Buddha or Christ, these
Yeah.
spiritual masters, they had to sit and face these entities and these more dense beings that may not be serving the light or may be serving the light just in a different way, like of guiding people through what they don't want. And at the end of the day, it's all God, right? So it's all serving us to that yin yang, and you can't have one
Hmm.
without the other. But these initiations uh, aren't to be feared, but now it's great, and part of why I started this podcast is so that we can shine the light on different teachers and people that can guide and help people in their journey when they're going through these kind of things, because I know,
Absolutely.
yeah, just like yourself, like I didn't have anybody to guide me in those times, and my parents were just like, you're good, just shut it out. When it got really crazy was when I watched The Sixth Sense. Like that was crazy because I was like, that's actually happening to me. And I remember not sleeping in my bed for like 9 months. Like I slept in a cot next to my parents' bed because I was like, okay, like this is actually a thing. They're making movies about it. It was I think looking back at it, it like made it more real, because before that it was just like my own experience and I was like, oh, is this actually happening? And then it was like, yep, it really is. And
Mhm.
but like just to give people the light of the situation, the silver lining of it is that through all those things, right, there's an opening to a connection, right? Like a channeling or a communication with these beings, and that opens the communication with my guides, with the angels, with all the light beings and all the beings that are there to help me because they were there the whole time. I just wasn't sure how to communicate with them, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yes, I agree that the communication can feel like, to our humanness, like it has to be tangible, like it has to make sense, like a Ouija board, like something, it has to make sense, but it's really so like inside the body that it happens, where um it's like a dance that you do every single day to like really fine tune that feeling center that so interestingly society was like, yeah, let's cut people off from their femininity and their feeling center so they can't be intuitive and inform themselves with their own thoughts and ideas that are coming from God. So like of course people nowadays are like they're more aware and like able to catch like when they're like kind of swept away in like the 3D world, but it's really, something that I'm also passionate about is like helping people understand like your feeling center has always been there. The muscle just hasn't really been used because that's not really like what was taught in school and everything like that. And I also wanted to touch upon, when spirits do interact with you, sleep paralysis is not always a bad thing because sometimes spirits will put you in like a psychosis almost where like they're freezing your body because they're doing upgrades and they're doing healings on you while you're sleeping. So, and sometimes you wake up and you're aware that it's happening and it's
Right.
uncomfortable. Like I've had that experience many times where I'm like, this is weird. Okay, try to go back to sleep, try to go back to sleep. And like I do, but I've communicated and they're like, oh yeah, we were just doing upgrades on your body and we needed you to be super still. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Right. Makes sense.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. But yeah, like communicating with spirits, it's always having that heart centered, like you're in your heart, you're choosing love, you're choosing the light, you're choosing to be of service and also helping ascension, which is helping spirits that are trapped and have chosen the darkness to go to the light. Like that's literally ascension,
Right.
that's how, if everyone on the planet was doing that, like that would be so amazing. You know how many
hmm
souls like people would be helping?
hmm
um I think that'd be amazing. So, yes, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, beautiful. And the question comes up like, what do you think happens to these spirits, these souls that get trapped? Like, do you think that they have karma that they still are clearing out while being on the planet? There's probably lots of different scenarios, but from my
Um,
understanding, that's part of it.
yes. So, what happens is, for example, let's take like a really bad example. Like,
Okay.
someone decides to kill someone, thinking like, I'm gonna like get rid of this person. Like, I will get rid of this person. Little do they know, they just created a lifelong bond to that soul that they killed.
Mm,
Because when they pass and they are met with the light, they have to atone and feel what they have done. And
mm,
and most souls that don't believe that they're worthy, that they're good enough because they've done really bad things like kill someone,
hmm
uh, they will choose the darkness immediately. They're like, there's no way I can be loved for this. This is such a horrible thing I've done. Like, there's no way. So they choose the darkness because darkness is like, yeah, we got you. Like, we
hmm
got you. But God is like, no, I still love you. Like, I still love you as a soul. But that moment and that feeling, most souls are just like, I don't understand how I'm worthy to go up there. You know,
hmm
it's really like a huge piece that I've seen. And I've just heard feedback from like spirits where I'm like, oh, that's really interesting.
hmm
Um, so, there's many, of course, there's many spirits, there's many souls. It's like maybe like a little part of like what happens. But it's always a choice. Like we have free will. And so we get to choose. And God is like, you can choose whatever you want, and also we create what heaven or something else looks like. Like
hmm
we create that in our mind. So if we're like, oh my God, heaven is amazing. Like I get to play with my friends. I get to go to the beach. It's like so fun up there.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's gonna be so fun. But if you're like, oh, it's a really serious place and like we're like this all the time or whatever, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna be like that. You know, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
again, we have such power in our free will and our beliefs in like what we're desiring, because God is like, you can have whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want. You choose that, okay, I still love you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, yes, it's karma. That karma is really interesting because when a person chooses to reincarnate and come back as a human to
Mm-hmm.
Earth, because you can go to different places, and they're like, oh, I want to go back to Earth, God. Like, I want to experience being a really wealthy person. So
Mm-hmm.
God is like, okay, I'm going to put you in scenarios where you're going to question your self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
and you are going to have to go through all the karma that you left behind in your other lifetime.
Right.
And good luck. And you're like, cool, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it works. And then like we come back and we're like, oh my God, like why? And some of us get caught up in like victim mentality and victimhood, and we're like, why me? But most of us break free, and then we're like, oh shit, like this is like all my stuff. Like I'm responsible for all of these interactions and experiences. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. That's really beautifully said. I really like that. And I think there's a book that came to mind that I read that I think a lot of listeners would really resonate with if they're trying to learn about what happens after we die. It's called Journey of Souls. And basically this,
Mm.
have you read it?
No, I've heard of it though.
Oh man, it's so good. So this I think this man, don't quote me, but I think he's a hypnotist and he takes 40 different cases of near-death experiences. So people that actually died, were clinically dead,
Mm-hmm.
and then came back into their body and he takes them into hypnosis and they speak about what happened when they died, right? And it's so interesting because there is like the same very similar scenario for pretty much every one of them where they go and they leave their body, their soul leaves the body, and then they get to meet with their guides, and their guides go over their lifetime. They're like, okay, you wanted to do this, you wanted to do that. Like here, you didn't really do that. Here, you did. Okay, like what do you want to do? And then, the people that choose, because like you said, they're making a choice to come back into their
Mm-hmm.
body, and those people that have these near death experiences, they have like a little bit of a moment where they're like, okay, I still haven't done this, I still haven't done that. And it's interesting because I had an experience similar to this back in 2012 or 2013. I was driving and I was about to I could see the fork in the road. Like I could see that I could die in that moment and I could see that I could also live. And my car was shaking and it was like about to flip over this ridge and I could have died that way, right? And it was this moment before my awakening, like before all that, it was like my this voice came and it was now I believe it's my higher self or one of my spirit guides, and the voice was like, are you ready to leave? And I was like, I haven't even started doing anything I came here to do yet. Like I remember saying that. And they were like, okay. And they moved the car to where my tire stopped right in between those dividers. Like, there's the guardrail and underneath the
Uh-huh.
guardrail there's dividers. And my right tire got stopped right in that divider, whereas it could have flipped over the cliff.
Wow.
And so I remember like I didn't get hurt at all. I was fine. Like everything was like it could have been really bad, but
Yeah.
I chose to stay And I remember like, okay, now I gotta it like give me a little bit of a boost, right? It was like, okay,
Mhm.
I want to start really doing the things I came here to do, whatever that was, you know? And this was, you know, 12, 13 years ago. So, did you ever have any experiences like that?
Well, Italy. Um, my dad and my older brother at the time like went to go get ice cream or something, and my mom went into labor. Long story short, she was not able to like articulate like her water broke, baby's coming. And so by the time the doctors and nurses figured out like baby's coming, me, I had drinking my mother's womb water and pretty much like was dying. And I remember even right now, like every time I tell this story, it's like I remember being like literally like emergency C-section ripped out and like put into an incubator.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
and it's so interesting because I was the only girl born in the hospital, and like it was very intense for not only me but like my mother too. Of like this is her firstborn child. Like this is very intense experience. Um, and then I've always felt very like very lucky with being out in the world, and literally nothing has like nothing has harmed me. In a way where like I've been driving a lot. There was like one time after my brother passed, I was driving on like really icy highway roads in Connecticut on the highway, and the big truck was like pushing the snow under my tires, and I just started like skidding and then spinning, and then I was okay. Like
Hmm.
the highway was full of cars. How am I untouched? The
Hmm.
car's fine, I'm fine. Some techno song was like blasting in my car the whole time.
Ah!
Just like what? Um, totally fine, totally untouched. I've had jet ski like incidences where like I went underwater for a really long time, and like I just popped back up.
Right.
She's alive, she's fine. So I feel very protected by by my guides and my ancestors.
Hmm.
Because I've had moments where I was like, that was very dangerous.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and, um,
In those
and
moments, did you ever have your guides or yeah, most of your guides or higher self communicate with you?
yes, it's usually in nature. Like I had a
Mm.
really magical one in Encinitas, Beacons Beach, right before I moved out here, where I went into the ocean and I went kind of out there, like, up to here in the water. And I just remember my body being like, stop, don't move. And I was like, okay. And I didn't move. I can't see in the water. And, I just start like I'm speaking in tongues, and I'm just like, okay, life is great. You
Yeah.
know, it's great. I swim back out. I climb up the big hill and I go to my car, and this man is like, I was praying for you. I'm like, why? He's like, you were surrounded by tiger sharks. I'm like, what?
Wow.
They were circling you. I was like, that makes sense. Yeah, because like I heard like myself just be like, stop, like don't move,
Wow.
gentle motions, start going back. I'm like, okay. So like I've had moments like that, you know, in the water on a mountain, hiking next to a waterfall in Yosemite, like kind of sketchy, dangerous moments in nature. But I've also had them with people too, where it's just like I'm literally moved out of this person's way, or they don't see me like in a room or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I hear my voice often, and sometimes it's interesting because I'll hear my ego and I'll hear my higher self, and my intuition, I call her, and my intuition's like, she is gentle, but she's got a strong voice. Like I can hear her. And then
Mhm.
my ego is like anxious.
Mm.
It's like I hear her, but she's like anxious. Like do it now. Like go now, go now, go now. Like, and I'm like, okay, let's dial it in.
Right.
So
Center a little bit.
yeah,
Right.
bring me back.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so you mentioned light language that you were doing with the sharks. I think so that brings up a beautiful experience that we had together where you organized a retreat out in Kauai on the
Yeah.
Hawaiian Islands, and it was so beautiful because I had just met you, and I remember feeling so called to this trip. And what we did we were there for I think 7 or 8 days, right?
Yeah, like a week.
Yeah, yeah, and every day around, lunchtime, we would lay down on our backs, and Venus would start channeling and speaking light language and connecting to the gods of Hawaii. And
Mhm.
it was really beautiful because every day was a different god, or demigod. I don't know the proper term for them, but they were we were connecting with them every day, and every day I would start hearing Venus. Her voice was so soothing and nurturing and calming, and then I would just leave my body. Like I would just go into that space of connecting with these demigods. And I remember it was really powerful and really beautiful. So
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that trip and also about what happens in those moments when you're connecting and how that all started for you, those kind of things.
Yes, thank you. That trip was so beautiful, and I laugh at myself because I had so much resistance around making it a retreat where people would come physically. I was like, no, I'll record this and then people can like look at it,
Hmm.
like just look
Right.
at it. And people were like, hey, so I'm coming to Kauai. Can I meet up with you? I'm like, mm. Still so resistant. And so eventually I was like, I gotta rent a place and like have these people come because this is God speaking to me of like, people want this. Like
Hmm.
they want to be there in person. Um, and I think for me at that time as well, I was still getting like comfortable speaking in tongues, speaking in light language, um, in front of people because I could feel when people were uncomfortable, or I could feel what they were saying.
Hmm.
Like I had many of my gifts were like coming back really strong, and Sonia Grace explains it really well. But one of the clair sentient or audience where I can literally hear someone's thoughts, and so like there's different, like I hear the person speaking, but I hear like two other thoughts come thinking from them. Like it's really interesting.
Mm.
So to say the least, during that time, I just sat down and I connected to the land and I was like, Kauai, you brought me here. Um, I had this beautiful vision and download of this retreat called the Sisterhood of the Pearl. Like it just came through one of my high priestess trainings, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to Kauai to like really help heal and activate the land and like do some really fun things with really fun people."
Hmm.
And so, when I would go into those states, it just comes naturally. But I have to just like teaching yoga, like I had to get still and calm and centered in my body and like make sure that I was in deep love and in deep joy to bring through these transmissions.
Hmm.
Um, because that's where you get the highest quality of a transmission, like of a channeling. It's like when you're just like, I am so happy right now to like bring this through, like, yes. And people will feel just like that elevation of that energy. And also it clears the space. Like only high vibrational beings can, come through and express their healing, their message, for everyone specifically that said yes. So this gift started when I was really little, during my hide under the covers from beings nights.
Hmm.
And I also speak Hungarian, so I was like, what am I speaking? When I was young, I would just kind of like mumble and say things, and I would also pretend that I was a witch and I made it rain and I made it a rainbow in the sky. And like my parents would just be like, yeah, she's just being, herself. But I would oftentimes then sing in light language in the shower, and my younger brother would hear me and he's like, what, that was awesome, like what was that? I'm like, I don't know, I'm
Mm.
just like making stuff up, like so it's always kind of been there, but then it really came back on and I realized it had an effect on people when I
Hmm.
would do it and someone would be like, wow, I feel so much better, I don't know what that was. I was like, oh, interesting, like was it what just happened? I had to
Mm.
like kind of put the pieces together because again, I didn't really see this on the mainstream. Now people are like, you turn on YouTube and it's like channeling the Octurians, and I'm like, this is
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
Was not available when I was younger.
Right.
So I also, yeah, I was just like, this is so cool. So like we're kind of from that generation where we really paved the way, and sometimes you're like, I'm just going with this. I'm sure you have many experiences where you're paving the way forward. I mean, I know you. You're a Sagittarius. You do stuff so much better than other people. Like that's just kind of how I view Sagittarius. You just like you do it so well. um, so I'm and it's just like an amazing journey to have that with your own self, and now I use it on my cats, to clear space. It just kind of like naturally comes through and I feel more comfortable, and this is definitely like a witch wound. It's just very deep of doing it in public where it just
Mm.
you're walking down the street and like I feel this call to like, oh, I want to just say this. I don't know why. Like I don't need to know why, but maybe a bird needs this. Maybe the tree needs this. It needs to come through, but there's still, even today, I'm like, I don't know, like there's a person coming, they might think X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
so I still today kind of have that reservation where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it here, but every day, like more and more, I'm like, no, just do what's uncomfortable. Like you're safe. No one's going to kill you. Like
Right.
you are
Right.
so safe. No one's going to burn you.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's kind of, my experience and my vision with that retreat. It felt like it was just going to be this one time thing, but now it feels very much like I want to just keep doing that. And that's where, like what I was saying earlier, that transition of my spiritual business is like I want to do that. I want more in person retreats, where amazing people like yourself are coming and they're adding to it, and who knows, like that collaboration element. Like I want that unity, that openness, that community feeling of like, no, we're all doing this together. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, maybe I organize the retreat. Yes, maybe I have some ideas, but also we are all here for a very similar reason and passion. So like,
Hmm.
let's do it together.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think
and the bigger picture is for the land, for maybe the,
I was gonna say that. I think that a big part of it was anchoring in the light and doing grid work as well with that experience.
yeah.
And I did feel like you held the container really beautifully and you made everyone feel included and part of it, and it was really profound. I really to this day feel like there's different subtle integration still happening from that. It was really beautiful. I really appreciated that. And I wanted to ask you like as you're doing it and like I'm passed out on the ground, right? I wouldn't even say passed out. I'm just astral traveling somewhere, right? Like I'm so comfortable that my soul is like dancing somewhere, right? Or speaking with the demigods or whatever it's doing, right? Like I don't know, I don't have memory of it, but I know if I went into like a hypnosis state, I could access that or in meditation. But like, are you aware are you sensing what some of these people's souls are doing, or are you just in your zone? Like, what's happening for you?
So I'm in my zone.
Hmm.
However, when I'm done kind of there's like how do I explain it? It's almost like an in and out feeling where it's like I'm in the zone, I'm super focused, but then I'm like aware. It's kind
Mm,
of like a breath, and then I'm like back in the zone, but then I'm like aware.
hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
and so when I sit down at the end and I like ground and just like look at everyone, um, I'm usually getting like a conversation from the other beings, like God, just being like, okay, this is what's happening. This is like, this is what you can say. Like, this is the message. Like, thank you, thank you. There's a lot of thank yous going on. But I'm also observing people. And when I look at them after, I can just immediately tell like what was happening. Like,
Mm,
body language, their eye contact with me, no eye contact with me. They want to share, they don't want to share. It's like all these different cues. I'm like, okay, and it's all great. Like there's no need to force someone into doing something that they're not ready for.
hmm.
But it's interesting because very much after I'm in the zone, and it's kind of over and people are integrating, once that integration starts to happen, then I can see more, you know,
Hmm.
'cause it's everyone is just kind of doing their own thing. They have their own contracts that they're like, hey, this is what I signed up to do here.
Hmm.
Um, and so they're kind of doing that. And I remember for a few people it was, you know, more emotional and like bigger releases, but for some it was a very like internal mental dialogue,
Hmm.
of just like noticing where they're really resistant or what's the word, stubborn.
Hmm. Hmm.
We can relate to that. And just noticing like maybe the questions of what they came with, of like maybe noticing the answers, and sometimes it's kind of intense to receive those messages because it's all on you. You know,
Hmm.
it's like
Hmm.
it's about you. And yeah, I think that that answers it all. But there's, it just comes kind of, it's different, you know, as well, like depending on how many people, the size of the group.
Hmm.
um yeah, so there's a little variance, but most of the time there's a breath of an in and out awareness.
Yeah, and looking back at it, I do remember uh certain experiences I had, but it's been several years now. So there was I remember, you know, I would be like traveling through the clouds and then there would be these different experiences and conversations with beings I was having. And yeah, it's a vague remembrance, but I remember it was very impactful for me in the moment, in the experience. So yeah,
Wow.
that was really beautiful. And then
Mhm.
I mean, obviously just being on the land and going to different, you know, sacred waters and to different sacred beaches and things like that, that was all really, really profound. I mean, Kauai is such a it's such a sacred space. I'm really curious, like if you went to some of the chakras of the planet, like Mount Shasta and Lake Titicaca, and these kind of places, like what what would come through, because it seems as though part of my mission is to visit those seven chakras on the planet, and then
Mm.
there's six gates that are meant to be activated and brought in the light to channel to really anchor in the light on the planet. And
Mhm.
when the 12 gates, which seven of those gates are the chakras, when 12 of those gates are opened, the 13th gate is actually in the city where I was born, in Moscow, Russia. So
Whoa.
yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah.
Have you gone back to visit?
Yeah, the I would go back in the summers to stay with my grandparents when I was younger, but the last time I was there was 2011. Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
super
I'm
cool.
not sure where in the city or what, or even if meant to be part of that mission, but I know that it it seems very uh, synchronous that I was born in that 13th gate, you know?
Yeah, that's really special.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of blew my mind when I first heard about it, you know? It was like, wow, what what a coincidence, quote unquote, you know?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so I was just saying, like, what a coincidence that that was that location, you know? And
Yeah.
uh yeah, so what I've heard Bashar, um the man named Daryl who channels a being named Bashar, and he talks about he's all over YouTube and Instagram, and he's got the bald head. A lot of you may have seen him, and he has a documentary movie. I forgot the name right now, but he talks about his experience of channeling when he first started, and how it would be like this rush of energy and this discomfort in his body until he like explained it as like fitting like a huge like river into like a tiny little like faucet, and what he meant by that was like the frequency of these beings that are in these higher dimensions that he's channeling, kind of
Mm.
coming into this human body, and it like filters down into this very condensed frequency for them because they're at such a high frequency. And so, have you ever experienced anything like that? Like, what is your experience with bodily experiences and sensations when you first started, or as it's been evolving?
So what just kind of always happens is my body will do like a motion, like either a rocking forwards, backwards, or side to side, just indication that my frequency is rising. We're going higher. I always feel it within my heart. There's like this quickening of energy where I feel like I did like a shot of nicotine or something. It's just like whoop.
Uh-huh.
Um, I get very warm. For me, it's a warm sensation. Like I get very, very hot. Um, and I know that how I like to connect is like not, I have autonomy over my body. So it's like my body is my body. But I can connect to you outside of my physical body and receive information. So that's just something that I've made as like a pact, I think maybe from experiences in other lifetimes where it maybe didn't go as I wanted. So like this is very much like a sacred place where nothing else can come in and like fully swap out
Mm.
um me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I am the one who gets to filter the message to really connect in and be like, is this coming from the highest truth of love, before I like bring it through.
Mm-hmm.
uh so that's just been my journey, and also like navigating. um it's really interesting because for me my experience was very much like a mental thing where it's like I'm listening to other spirits maybe from darkness, and I'm like, and they're telling me things that I want to hear, and then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a minute, I actually want to talk to higher vibrational beings that will give me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
um so my journey with that was like, uh where did it come from? It's like I stopped listening to the truth because I didn't want to hear it from higher dimensional beings, because when I shared my truth with people, people would hurt me or discredit me or like be mean or whatever. And so like I made up this thing that of course now is dismantled, but
Mm-hmm.
that's like that was my journey with listening to all different types of beings and then like discerning that energy, being
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I want to know the truth. Like, I want to know more. And they'd be like, well, we have to remove these layers because you don't actually want to hear the truth. And it's like, oh, interesting.
Mm.
So it was very healing for me as well. And learning my, you know, my, I guess like shortcomings is the word, but that's not really the vibe. Just learning more about myself and like my journey with that. And like really instilling that discernment and integrity when I do channel and connect in with the spirit world. It's like I'm only wanting to channel from the highest truth of love, like
Absolutely.
higher dimensional beings. Like that's it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very rarely in a session if I want to find out more information, because most of the time, because I've been there, people are like, no, everything's fine, everything's great. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, is it really? Okay.
Right, right,
You have no faults. That's cool.
right,
That for you.
right.
So I will ask the spirits that they're actually talking to, the darkness. I will ask them. I'm like, so why is she choosing to listen to you? And they'd be like, oh yeah, she's got this going on with her mom, this going on, this. She doesn't want to face this. So we're just feeding her more of this. And I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Playing into her illusion. So
And
yeah.
they're feeding off of that. That's kind of the relationship there. So, this is a great segue into people that are ready to remove these types of attachments and entities and things like that. Uh, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's like it sounds so simple, yet it's like
Right, right.
so your attention is everything. Okay. Where your attention is, where your focus, what you're listening to. Um, the spirits are trying to get your attention all the time.
Hmm.
All the time. So where you're choosing to focus your attention is what you're going to be receiving more of. For example, you know, if you hear, it's so clear, like go out into the world and just talk to people, you will be mirrored what is going on with you. You know,
Right.
like if a friend comes to me and she's complaining and she's in victimhood, I'm like, oh shit, I'm listening to stuff from the darkness, you know, because I will see it in someone else and I'll be like, we got to shift this right now. My attention, they've been feeding me stuff I want to hear. You know, like we all know what that is. Like they're feeding the stories that keep you small. They keep you in that, well, I'm not going to, you know, make space for this person. I'm not going to open my heart or whatever it is, like to keep you in that small story because
Hmm.
they get energy off of your fear.
Right.
um So in order to clear stuff like that, and I clear every single day. I don't think it's like one and done. I would love to get to that point where, because your attention is going, like, you could go online and like unintentionally click on something, and then you're like focused on this like traumatic negative horror story, and then you're like, oh my goodness, I've been listening to that for the last hour, you
Right.
know. And so more of that is going to come into your field because you've been listening to more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um so the way that I clear it, here's a few ways to do it. If Because I actually love horror movies, like, what's that new one with Dracula? Nosfertura. I just butchered the name. Nosfertura.
I don't
Y'all
know.
get it. We're into it.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful romantic Dracula love story. Lily Depp is in it. She's amazing. And so I will tell my ego, I will say, ego, do not take any of this information in. Mind, body, emotion, spirit, subconscious mind, don't take on any of this information. It's just for entertainment. And so,
Mm.
like, my
Mm-hmm.
body's not going to be taking in this like information. It's just like, okay, we're enjoying our time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's one way to clear the dimension of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then another way is, if you're journaling or if you are having a conversation with a friend, is being aware of the discussion. Is it which channel? Is it like a fear-based discussion, or is it a love-based discussion? And notice if you can try to pivot it. Of course, it's from like fear to like a love-based discussion, because that's going to help you filter. So for example, if you choose to listen to someone complain for an hour, darkness is going to be like, oh, she easily like will choose to do that, so we're going to give her more of that. Like,
Mm.
she doesn't have boundaries against this. But if you choose not to, like, if you're like, hey, I'm so sorry, like, I have to actually go, or if it's in a text message, you just don't reply. Like, you don't have to reply, because if you're choosing to engage, it's like, again, you're making a choice. Like, this is what I want, this is the energy I'm focusing on.
Mm.
And this is a lot deeper of a topic, because people will have guilt. Well, I wouldn't want to treat someone like that. I would want to reply to a text and like give them a nice message. Do you though? Like, why are you feeling guilty?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's so deeper than that, but that's, I feel like, for another topic. But I experience that as well, because I'm human, and I will catch myself when I'm moving from guilt, and I'm like, oh no, no. I don't want to move from guilt. I only want to move from love. And I will literally stop. I won't reply. I won't respond to someone, because if I'm moving from guilt, darkness wins.
Right.
End of story. Or if I choose to stop myself and go back into my heart and be like, what's really beneficial for me? I'm choosing God. I'm choosing God consciousness, Christ consciousness. I'm choosing to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like, I feel maybe a slightly more rational way someone could just like catch themselves day to day, because we're human.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then if you really want to like sit down and clear yourself, you just have to ask your ego, or your emotions, um, what are you listening to right now? Are you listening to love? Are you um, moving from a place that is empowering? And so these are like deep journal questions where your ego will tell you the answer, because it's here to be your assistant. It's just going to tell you, yeah, I'm actually like reliving this story from your childhood and playing it out in every romantic relationship because you want to feel safe and in control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can we not do that?
Right. Right.
So, and because spirits are always listening, once you start to establish this authority with yourself, they're not going to want to stick around,
Mm-hmm.
because they know you willingly can send them to the light. It's so easy. I'll
Mm-hmm.
just sit in bed and be like, little girl, because I like to play with my inner child.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, little girl, take your magical wand and find a really creative way to send the darkness you've been listening to that makes you feel bad about yourself and send them to the light. And
Mm-hmm.
then I will wait, I will yawn, my eyes will water, maybe I'll take a really big deep breath, or I'll just feel different
Mm-hmm.
and I'll know it's been done. And it
Mm-hmm.
really is that easy, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But I've gotten to a place where I really believe and I have full conviction that I can do it because I've done it so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, again, that muscle needs to be practiced.
Yeah, and to add on top of that, I think there's a lot of tools out there for people to move and manage their energy. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, it's a daily practice, right? It's like taking a shower for
Mm-hmm.
your energetic body, right? And so like what I work with every morning is hape, which is like a tobacco snuff from the Amazon that is meant to feel my body. And to what I like to incorporate is tapping. So I'll tap, starting from my hands, go up towards my chest, starting from my feet, all the way up to my throat. And then I think a big part of it is intention and also speaking it into this reality.
Mm.
So I'll say, I want to align with my highest timeline. I want to align with love with the people I'm going to be interacting with today. I want to be of service, or I am being of service today. Those kind of affirmations, and
Mm.
then and intentions, right? And then from there, I'll say anything that is not serving my highest, anything that's not aligned with love, anything that is any dis-ease in my body. I want that out. And so,
Mm.
kind of like you said, maybe I'll cry, maybe I'll have some tears run down my face, or I'll start sweating, or I'll actually purge. Very rarely I'll have food, like actual food come out. It's usually energetic. And I also like to create a channel of light going through my body and through the
Mm.
place where I'm sitting so that anything that comes out of me goes directly to creator to get alchemized, or down to the earth if to for the earth to dissolve it.
Yeah.
And so with that, it's I'm clearing because I live in Las Vegas, so there's a lot of dense energy here, and I
Yeah.
have to I have to make sure I'm doing it every day. If you don't have access to that type of medicine, Kundalini yoga has been a profound teacher for me with this kind of thing. There's all these what are called kriyas, which are a set of movements that are very specific for what the individual is working on. So let's say you want to clear your aura every day. There's very specific movements like above the head, like this, like clearing out for X amount of minutes. And so then it's also aligning the spine, allowing for the Kundalini energy to rise up and for
Mm.
the channel, as you will, to be open and centered and the chakras to be aligned. So yeah, there's a lot of different tools out there. Even meditation is a great way, right? Like just sitting
Yeah.
in silence and just like tuning in, like where in my body am I holding tension? Where is it that what emotions am I holding? Like, am I worrying about something my friend at work has shared with me,
Mm.
and I can breathe and release that, right? Like I can use my breath to release that from my body. And then there's things like the chi machine, right? Where you lay on it, and it's been created by the Japanese, where originally the Tibetan monks, they still do, where they hold each other's ankles and they oscillate, with them laying on their back. And that's just like starting to move the energy, opening up the meridians, opening up these nadis, these channels, right? And then
Mm.
and then that starts to allow that energy to move, right? Like that stagnation that happens in the body also can be the stagnation of the emotions in those areas. And so that starts moving, and then we allow ourselves to feel, right? Like we were saying earlier. And then
Yes.
from there, we can start to release. But we have to have awareness of the body and the connection of the emotions and the feelings that are being held in different parts of the body. So that's just a couple of tools. There's so many other things you can do, but is there any other tools that you would recommend?
And so, as a spirit shaman, I love going to the spirit world. As you can tell, it's like it's just been so profound for me
Hmm.
because I'm very much like, I have a lot of air in my astrology, which I don't want to blame it on that, but I like to think, being my mind. So getting in my body and feeling and communicating with the spirit world and just going directly there and being like, what's going on here?
Hmm.
Like, what am I not seeing?
Right.
Is really helpful for me. But to answer your question, I start my day every day with prayer. Like, I wake up and I'm just like, thank you, God, for this beautiful life. Like, I'm so blessed. And I'll sit in prayer. Um, I will do a few different like activation meditations, which are moving energy in my body. Again, just different forms of meditation and movement that I've learned in like my shamanism training. And one of them is really cool. So you'll stand up. You can also do it sitting, but you'll take your hands and you'll just take your eyes and you'll move from left to right about 40
Mm.
times, but you're also breathing in sync. And so this is literally balancing your left and right hemisphere of your brain. So you're balanced, you're clear, you're connected. It's so wonderful if you've had like a hard conversation or something's just on your mind and you can't stop going there. I love doing that. I'm just like, boop, super balanced, super clear. Um, I love to dance as well. Like I will intentionally get up. Every day is different. Sometimes it's a 5 minute dance. Sometimes it's an hour long dance. But I'll
Hmm.
make the intentions, especially as a woman, to move my hips, to be free, to move my emotions and anything in my body that needs to be released in like maybe not a graceful way.
Hmm.
Like it's just gonna come out how it's gonna come out, and like I'm stretching and moving my body because for women, most of us have like super tight spandex pants or underwear on and everything's just compressed, and like we're maybe not moving our hips only like during intimacy, and it's just like that's not how it is. Like
Right.
um you need to be able to move your hips throughout the day, connecting with yourself, being embodied. Um, so for me, those are like really specific, like feminine practices that I do that just make me feel really balanced, and they fuel my like radiance and receptivity. So I'm like, okay, I'm able to like be in my feminine and like in my power, and show up in like a really beautiful way.
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
I think for any women listening, those are some really beautiful tools. I think ecstatic dance is such powerful medicine where,
Yeah.
anybody who hasn't experienced it, it's basically a safe container where people go to dance. Most cities have ecstatic dance in different
Mhm.
parts of the world. And so in that space, you can just be free to dance and move and make sounds, whatever you want in without any judgment, right? Like everybody's there to just do whatever they want. And in that space, it's been so freeing for me because I will just like do, strange movements that like open up my back, like open up my hips, like allow for energy to start really flowing. And then from
Mhm.
there, it's like I feel so good because my body is loose, and also all that tightness that we were talking about where we hold it, it starts to loosen up,
Mhm.
and you can do it different ways. You can go and do it in the steam room to loosen up. You can work out. You can do martial
Yeah.
arts. I mean, there's so many ways to connect to the body. Qigong is another amazing one, and Tai Chi,
Pilates.
Pilates. Yeah, you're really into Pilates lately, right?
Yeah, I love it. Oh,
Yeah. I don't think I've ever tried it. I know it's amazing for the core and for overall body strength. So yeah, I know that that's an awesome practice as well. Any type of sweating, right? Like allowing
mhm.
sweat like moves that energy.
Hot bath.
Right, right. Yeah, I heard I heard a podcast the other day. Um, it was a Theo Vaughn podcast, and he had uh, oh my gosh, what's the comedian, the African American comedian that has the oh man, I'm blanking out on his name. He has he usually straightens his hair and he kind of like dresses like a pimp. Uh, and he's like
Cat
really
Williams.
yeah, yeah, Cat Williams. Yeah, you knew it. I knew you'd get it. So I don't know why I was blanking out on Cat Williams for a second, but basically he talked about how when you're in water, he says he does a lot of baths and things like that, and when you're in water, the denser energies can't touch you. And I thought that was really interesting because I've never thought about it like that. But, I would go in the ocean when I lived in San Diego daily, and I would feel
Yeah.
so cleansed by the water,
Hmm.
And I always feel so good going into a body of water. And it makes so much sense that um, especially if you add Epsom salts to the bath and essential oils and things like that, it really starts to cleanse the body. In different cultures, like in Mexico, they have baños where they use different herbs to help to cleanse the body for X amount of days. So many
Mm.
cultures around the world do that, and just using the frequency of these herbs to elevate and cleanse the body when it may be, feeling a little bit down, or the frequency may, you know, be a little bit lower for whatever reason. Maybe it's,
Yeah,
you know,
I
so,
love baths. And I love that you can program water as well. Like I like to
mm,
sit in a bath and I'll listen or I'll watch something that's like what I want to be in the energy of, like love or excitement or like peace. I'll have that on because I'm tuning the water with my emotion.
hmm
Um, Very powerful. I love bath time.
yeah, it's awesome. It's another great way to clear and cleanse.
Yeah.
So I think to wrap things up, it would be really awesome to hear one or two like really far out like extraterrestrial experiences.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Done. Easy.
Okay.
I'm ready. So, okay. So in 2021, I'm I'm going to Egypt, so it's kind of a big thing. I'm going to Egypt. I felt the call. The money came in like I'm like, "Oh, I'm like destined to go to Egypt on this like sacred pilgrimage with 22 women." It was like so amazing,
Wow.
life-changing. And before I'm like going, I'm having more and more visitations. Now, I'm at this time living in Vista in the middle of nowhere in California, just like out there,
hmm
nothing around. And let me tell you, I have one cat at the time, Shiva. Uh, and I just noticed that she's terrified of something. And I'm like, a cat scared? I haven't seen this before.
hmm
And she's just like under the cover next to me. I'm like, this is like so unusual behavior from you. Like,
Right.
what is going on here? So I wake up and I'm there's like multiple things happening at the same time. I hear my ancestors cheering. And I'm like, I'm waking up to like clapping, whistling, like I'm just like, what is going on? Like, there's no one around. Like, I don't have neighbors. Like, this is so interesting. And then I'm also hearing the landing of a spaceship on my on the sea on the roof.
Oh, wow.
Like 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 when you hear a plane, like it's like everything, like it's full on happening, and I'm like, what is going on? It's
Wow.
like 3 o'clock in the morning, of course. And then it gets better. I hear all of these little grays running around my like one bedroom, like out there, and they're just like running around outside, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little uncomfortable, and I'm also like annoyed because I'm awake. Like,
Right, right.
this is super not fun. And so then they start coming in my door, and now there's a few like there's like a perimeter around me, like you can't come to a certain point, but like I can still see you. Um, so like there's like this 8 foot diameter around me is like untouchable. And so like a few come in and they're just standing like right by my bed, and I'm like, this is unacceptable. Get out. And
Hmm.
so I call in my ancestors who were cheering, not surprised, and I just like fully clear, and they leave. This took like an hour and a half. But they leave, but they were coming, and I got like the part 2 download in Egypt. They were coming. This is just, I haven't really talked about this a lot, but they were coming because there are certain codes within my DNA and structure that I hold uh, that have been passed down in my ancestry to be kept safe.
Hmm.
Um, like these divine union codes. And
Hmm.
so when I went to Egypt, I then understood why I was like having all of these visitations. Like that was one experience that was pretty like this is wild. I
Right.
had several like other ones that weren't as disruptive, but when I was in Egypt, I I led this really very emotional like a ceremony with all of these beautiful women, um, where I literally gave like my menstrual blood to the earth. I happened to be menstruating at a very powerful time. I'm giving it to the earth, and then I'm receiving these divine union codes.
Mm.
It was a very emotional experience. And then I understood why I was hunted and killed in many other lifetimes, from
Hmm.
not just humans, but just from other beings. Because they're like, yo, I want to get this code. I could make so many superhuman or so many super alien beings.
Hmm.
And it could be really fun. Uh, like they've just been passed down. And it's really interesting because on the pilgrimage in the circle that I'm holding, there is my high priestess in all lifetimes. She was there, happened to be there on this journey. I didn't
Hmm.
even know she was going to be there. And we
Wow.
didn't know that that was a thing, but she was so protective of me the whole journey, where she literally was just there. And so um, that was a really powerful moment, because then I started to really acknowledge, wow, I'm a priestess. Like, this is not just a thing I thought was cool or
Right.
whatever. Like, no, like this has been in my ancestry. Like, I'm a priestess. Like, I've been with Isis. Like, there's just so many beautiful things like we all have as women, like have had many similar experiences. And it was just that was one of the many beautiful big awakenings that happened in Egypt. um, and so yeah, that was a big one.
Wow.
Because I didn't realize that when I was younger, I was also being hunted. Like, the fear that I was feeling, it was from these like I would have many visitations, but I was scared because I really thought they were going to take me. Like,
Hmm.
the fear I had was abduction. Like I thought I
Hmm.
was gonna be abducted. Like,
Hmm.
and so when I was younger, and then I had that same like epiphany when I was in Vista, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm gonna be abducted. This
Hmm.
is wild.
Hmm.
And of course it didn't happen because I really stood my ground and I was like, I'm not going to give in to fear. You don't have the autonomy to take me. Like this is my body and I get to choose this. Because they wanted to stop me from getting the codes in Egypt.
Hmm.
So interesting.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
wild.
Yeah, that's super wild.
Yeah,
Is it okay if I ask a couple of questions about that experience?
of
So,
course.
so they come into your house, right? Are they saying anything out loud? Are they making any sounds? They are. Okay. And are you telepathically communicating or hearing anything they're saying?
I am, and I'm just with this particular type of alien. Um, they're not. They're very almost like robotic, like they don't have emotion, they don't understand. They just have a they're here for a mission, they want to complete it, and that's it. Like whatever it takes kind of energy. So with them it's just I just strictly have to keep a boundary and I keep it until they leave. And it's almost like you have to look them in the eye, in the face, and face them, and then they'll leave because they're like, oh, okay, like we can't, she's not scared, this is weird.
Mm-hmm.
We thought she'd be scared, and then we could take her. We don't know what to do here. So
Right.
then they leave, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I'm
I've heard that
communicating.
the
Yeah,
Greys are they're more like kind of like droids. Like
yeah, it's
they're like
yeah.
programmed to do certain missions and they're almost like you said like almost robotic. So that's really interesting that and there wasn't any other ones like taller ones or other colored ones that you saw like that were maybe in the ship or uh controlling them from somewhere.
And so there were like two really, really big ones that were in the ship,
Hmm.
and they were kind of like giant, silent giants. Um,
Hmm.
just kind of there to make sure like all these little grays would like go and do their thing.
Hmm.
Um, and then they realized like, okay, this isn't really actually going to happen. And that landing of the spaceship happened like three times. It's like
Oh, in the same night.
not the same night, but different attempts. Like
Oh, okay.
leading up to me leaving for Egypt. I was like, this is wild. Like,
Hmm.
what's going on here? And then I realized in Egypt, oh, that's why.
Hmm. Right.
they they didn't want me to go.
Right.
So it was just really interesting. But just like with all beings, aliens, like there's some good, there's some not good. They just have different energies. Um, like the Pleiades, amazing. They're here for humanity. Like they want to help.
Hmm.
They want to be here. They love humans. They love Earth. Like they want to help. So not to scare people, listening to this like, oh my God, like everything I see in the movies is real. No, it's 1,000% not real.
Hmm.
Um, but like the fear element, like it again, going back to like spirit shamanism, staying in your heart, not giving into that fear
Hmm.
is how you get to clear, is how you get to communicate. Um, you can even communicate with a color. Like I love pink. Pink is very protective of me. It's just I blast out the pink, and sometimes I'll get like a color back, and I'm like, oh, interesting. Um, but not all the time. So that's again something to develop with your intuition of like channeling.
Hmm.
Um, and that's pretty cool. You could practice with your guides or your angels with that.
And so with the when you blast out the pink and you receive a color back, what is happening there? What's the color coming back from?
So I'll blast out, for example, like this is what love means to me, pink.
Mm,
Like,
okay.
and then they'll be like, well, this is what love means to me, yellow. And I'm like,
Ah, okay.
interesting.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's a way to communicate. And that's just like building communication.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just another tool if you want to do that. But most people in a situation like that aren't going to be like, let me do a color right now. You're
Right,
like,
right. How Yeah, that's more advanced level courses there.
like just stay in your heart and you'll be good. Like stay in your heart center. Know that you're no one can hurt you unless you believe they can take you, believe they can hurt you. Like
Mhm.
keep your autonomy. So
So if somebody's in that state of fear and it's like starting to spiral out and they're having a hard time connecting to their heart, like what could somebody do in that situation?
which I have been there many times. Let me just make that super clear. I have had many experiences. I'm not a perfect human that I came out this way. Like I want to make that super clear. I've had many nights like that, many times where I'm like so scared, where it's so insane, like this is wild. So
Hmm.
what I do in those moments and what I started to do when that happened is Archangel Angel Michael, however you want to call him. That's my guy. I'm just
Hmm.
like, Angel Michael, be here. And when I was younger, I actually found something on YouTube that was like a prayer because I was like, I don't know how to pray. I'm
Right.
like, I was so caught up in like, what if I say it wrong and whatever. So I like found something online and I like, I would just play it and then I would repeat the words and I would feel like, okay, like I'm okay. But now, if I do feel fear, I just say, ancestors, Mother, Father, God, like, let me know that I'm safe. And then I'll start to feel that and I'll just be like, I'll just be real. Like I'm talking to you. I'll be like, I'm afraid right now. Can you help show me how to clear this space? Can
Hmm.
you help show me how to feel safe? Can you help me get back in my heart center? Because I'm afraid right now. And they'll be like, okay, and it'll just happen, you know, because spirit is always in a service to you. So if you say, show me how, they got to show you how, you
Right.
know,
Right.
that's just what they do. So yeah, and just reminding myself, like, I'm not alone ever, you know,
Yeah.
in those moments, it's like, I just need to speak and activate my voice. That's why it's so important for women to like really learn that. Um, as a priestess, it's like you get to invoke your ancestors, you get to invoke the light, you get to invoke all of the truth from God. And
Right.
like when you start doing that, it's like natural. So now it's like my prayer that I say, it's a clearing one, it's invoking Mother, Father, God, are the archangels, the masters, galactic healers, and higher vibrational beings and all the spirit animals because like I'm like, yeah, my God, everyone's here, you
Right.
know? Um, and I just have to invoke them if I need their assistance. So it's definitely been a huge journey from like, you know, playing playing a YouTube video that I'm like, please help me pray to like
Right.
now I've learned how to pray, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful journey, and I think what the key, from everything you shared is that heart like led space, right? Like, and the communication and the telepathy can only happen when that heart is open and allowing. So the reason why, people have experiences in their dream state is because there isn't those blockages like when we're awake in this body, and so the journey, it seems as though in order to develop deeper into these kind of things is to
Mm-hmm.
open up the heart and to really connect to love and connect to that loving essence of every being, and then from that space, have autonomy, and also that opens that connection, that channel. And There's different,
Mhm.
like for me, I found integrated energy therapy. So with that, I was taught how to connect with my angelic guides. And then I was actually visited by like physically visited by my guardian angel, and showed herself to me. But the first time she came as like a little blue ball of light, and I was scared. I was in the middle of the basement, like in a dark basement in my dad's house, and I'm like, "What the heck is this?" Right? And then out of this little blue ball, I received, my heart was open enough that I received a telepathic message telling me a name to look up on Facebook. I typed in the name, and it was the picture, the cover image of this person was a book that was open, and it said love on both
Mhm.
pages. And I was like, okay, this being's coming with love. I Then the next night, same thing happened. I saw the blue light for a second. This time I wasn't scared. I knew it was coming with love, and this like amazing like sacred geometry being with all different like flower of life moving through with all these different colors, and it was like part translucent with like rainbow colors moving around. And she told me her name telepathically, and it turned out, I looked up, as a human she was in charge of the twin flames, and she would like guide that divine union. And it was really interesting because
Wow.
I was in this whole journey with that at the time, and it was really reassuring that I could always connect with her, and she was my main guardian angel. So it was really, really
Wow.
powerful. So yeah, thank you for sharing your stories and being so open, and for sharing your light with the world. I feel like we could keep going for many more hours
Yeah.
and easily. But I'm sure we'll schedule a second part to this. So, thank you
Yeah.
so much again, Venus. It was such an honor to have
Thank
you.
you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you.
I love you. Until next time.
Okay.